Matthew, welcome to the Miles To Zen podcast. I'm so thrilled to have you on our podcast today.
Thanks for having me. We're just getting to know each other, and thanks to Ruth for connecting us. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So Ruth Andermatt has been my go-to leadership coach for the last 6+ years, and she was who introduced us. And we've got a couple episodes with Ruth on the podcast.
Yeah.
And I was listening to Matthew speak and stalking all of his social media. And I was like, I like this guy. I think he's doing some really great work in the world. And so Matthew is a leadership coach. And you know what's funny? I read negotiator and medium coach. And I was like, what? That doesn't sound right. Those are some of my other guests, but negotiator and mediator, team facilitation, and many other things. And I was wondering, Matthew, if you could give us a more formal introduction to who is Matthew and what he does in the world, and then give us a little bit of an insight into how you got from a sales job with our friend Ruth to now doing what you're doing, working with teams, really helping bring in some unity, but also a lot of success into these teams that you're working with. So
Well,
over to you.
Thank you. And thanks again for having me. Like you said at the beginning, the informal introduction is usually the most genuine, authentic one. So thank you. And 30 years ago, I just actually with Ruth earlier this morning. 30 years ago, I met Ruth, and it's so funny, Shannon. I asked her how and what I should record on my voicemail. So I was brand new in sales, and I asked her, what should I say in my recording? And it's funny you talk about sort of connection and relationship and teams. Without really knowing it then, I wanted to leave a voicemail recording on my voicemail that would show that I cared and showed that, oh no, I'm so sorry you can't get a hold of me, and I can't wait to connect with you, even though I don't know why they're calling me. So it's
Right.
great that we have that connection. And I, over the last 35 years, even longer, I'm 54, ever since I think been born, I've been interested in being in relationship with people because I couldn't do it on my own. And I didn't realize that when I was born, Shannon. I
I was
realized,
going to say, were you that kind of kid? Were you always talking to strangers in airports kind of kid?
I don't think so. I was pretty shy. I would say I was insecure. I came across, my wife says, when she first got to know me, that I was like a duck. So really confident on the surface, outgoing, an extrovert. And yet underneath, within me, I was an insecure, low identity introvert. So not that
With
extrovert.
your little feet going a million miles an hour just to cope in the external world.
Yeah, and yet people wouldn't. They wouldn't realize that what was going on, and not that an introvert or an extrovert, one's not better than the other. So anyway, long story short, I got into this business, and I failed. The first time ever I led a team in the corporate world, in the mobile phone industry, my ego went through the roof, which was really my insecurity going to the basement. And I crumbled, I failed, and I lost the ability to have a relationship with my team. And so I was demoted. So it was an early, call it train wreck, or an early crash and burn. That was, in hindsight, the best thing that ever happened. At the time, it was the worst thing that could happen.
Oh, that must have been devastating. Just starting out, you get the team, and I've seen it. I've seen this happen. What what happened in your case? What was the engine doing?
Well, it was the mobile phone industry was taking off, and I attributed the success in sales to me. And it didn't matter who, this is said as respectfully as it can, it didn't matter who was leading at the time. Sales were going to be great. And it's so embarrassing, Shannon. I would ask people to my team to photocopy their day timers. This is pre cell phones, even pre-internet. And because I was so powerful in my mind, and I was the manager, I just asked them to photocopy their day timers and put it under my door. And if they were so lucky, I would look at their day. It was brutal. Like if you right now, I know, look at your face. If you looked up,
Sorry, did I have a? Okay, I am a WYSIWYG. It's one of my best qualities and one of the worst. What you see is what you get, and so that I couldn't change the face. Yes, I was judging you, Matthew. I'm sorry.
no, it was my team, and my face is red, thinking of what it was. So long, my ego went through the roof. My insecurity was really what was going underneath the surface. Back to the duck analogy, and I was demoted, rightfully so. And then I ended up getting a mentor. I ended up getting a coach. Although we didn't call them coaches back then, and I ended up really bringing my humility into place and saying, look, I want to get better at this thing called leading and being in a relationship with people to drive extraordinary results. And so I went on a journey, and I'm still on it. I'm still on it today. And I love your word. We chatted yesterday. I love your word of curiosity. I'm really interested in that word and what that can bring to teams and businesses and customers and people in relationship.
Well, and this makes you perfect for the podcast because my core themes are curiosity, creativity, and connection. And I didn't notice this right away, but my last podcast was all about balance. And there are the scales right behind you, which is hilarious. It's perfect. I love it.
What you mentioned as a mediator, I'm actually a step before mediation. I love moving into conversations where there is conflict and there is friction, because great things can come from that and terrible things can come from that.
Yeah.
And that was a gift I bought for myself after getting a certification in mediation. And they're imbalanced on purpose.
Yeah,
Life is imbalanced. Or another perspective is it's perfectly balanced. Like it depends on how you want to live.
Yeah, it's true. Well, that last episode was called The Unbalanced Libra. So there's so much stuff that I want to talk to you about. And I think it's really interesting, your perspective being out there in the world, working with teams. And what is it that you're seeing right now? Just some general observations of what you're seeing within teams, what you're seeing that's bubbling up to the surface, even like right now, or even things that have been coming that you've seen kind of coming in over the last year or so.
Yeah, great question. There's a mixture of things that I'm exposed to. A couple of them are, it's based in Canada, as you are. Some of your listeners might be. It is currently economically challenging to exist compared to what it was, say, 30 years ago. The cost of living, the rising rates of things. And so I'm seeing pressure on people. And as a result, the patience level or the curiosity is lower than it could be.
Mm.
I think call it the political nature of things, the global nature of things, social media. I think that's causing some disconnection. So the opposite of your word, connection. I'm noticing that.
When
And
you say disconnection with social media,
yeah,
is that because people are just losing themselves in social media rather than doing something else, or not living an authentic life, or
yeah, so I think back to the scales for a second. It's funny when you ask questions of me, Shannon, I can quickly flip my perspective and go, actually, social media is really a good connector. So you and I are not connected unless I listened to your podcast episode with Rick. And I
yeah,
saw that, I believe it was an Instagram post or a LinkedIn post that I forget what it was. So even as you asked the question, I'm now flipping my answer about
are
social
you
media.
sure you're not a Libra?
Yeah, maybe. But I think this is the beauty of what is I'm seeing out there is is people will lock onto a perspective like I just did, which is social media is causing disconnection. And then through more conversation and more curiosity and looking at it, it's like, oh, we're actually only connected because of a social media platform. So what I'm noticing out there is there's some tension, and I'm loving meeting teams in that. And collectively, you and I spoke about this acronym WTF.
Yeah.
I think there's a some people are feeling WTF, and it is what you think it means. The negative version.
Yeah. And I've
There's
written
also
that at the top of my notes here. I have WTF and then so what now? I guess it's on your social media. You've got the infinity symbol in between. And I love that. And yeah, I do want to talk more about that too.
yeah. So to finish the question about what am I noticing in the corporate space and in the teams that I get to work with, I'm noticing that there's a sort of collective WTF experience, initially negative.
Yeah.
And then when I get to speak with teams and I ask them about their purpose, their mission, their vision, and their company KPIs and some of those non-human metrics, it begs the question, so what now? So I'm really noticing that teams are struggling and thriving, both, and through really rich conversation, curiosity, getting connected, slowing down a little,
Yeah.
and sort of saying, hey, so what do we do now based on the environment? That's what I'm seeing. And I'm biased because that's actually what I do for a living. So
Yeah.
that's my view. That's what I'm seeing.
And that's entirely okay. I've seen that work wonders in a workplace. And I think that it's hard for people to realize that if they're not looking. If they're not looking at a before connection and after connection, it's if they're not aware of it, they can feel that something has perhaps changed when it happens. And they can't really feel like that's the problem until it no longer exists, almost. They know that something is funny. And so what would you think then is a predicator of a team's success? If you go into a team or your ideal team, what are the things that they do really well?
Couple of things. They have a common purpose, and that will sound to some like a buzzword or an of course, or I've heard that before. Simon Sinek, great author. He has the book Start With Why.
Yeah.
And so successful teams, I notice, have a purpose. They have a set of core values that they break, and yet they can come back to them because they have the core values. So some people who are cynical about, they point at the words on the wall and they say, yeah, well, our team doesn't do that. You're right. At times they don't. And that's why they're on the wall, is for us to pull them off and then behave in alignment with them again. I think the other thing that is predicator for successful teams is they're not surprised when there's struggle. They're not surprised when they have the WTF. In fact, there's a business associate of mine, Mike Trotman, who I've worked really closely with for the last 10 years. And he says to me, Matt, I don't pay you, nor do I pay my team to articulate the WTF moments. I actually pay you and support you and empower you and the team to come up with the so what now solutions. What he is saying is, he's saying, of course, you're going to have those moments, both good, like, oh my goodness, WTF, great.
Yeah.
And WTF, not so great. And what he's saying is keep moving through in alignment with what we're trying to achieve together in relationship with customers and each other, and find out the solution. So I think great teams recognize when there's a moment, they do have the natural trigger, and then they move through together, Shannon, without blame, is take ownership of what are the solutions we need now? Like, so what now and so what next? That's what
Yeah.
I notice teams who are successful are working through.
And so let's bring it back to the individual role on the team. And I know I was talking to you about the latest Dyer the CEO podcast. And it was really interesting because he was interviewing Evy Pompouras. I'm not sure if that's how you say your last name. And she was saying, we don't want your authentic self coming into work. We want your professional self. And there was a little bit of dialogue around that. And I think there was just a choice of words that we probably agree with in concept. Just my authentic self would be of course it would be my professional self, but it would be my whole self and my best self and myself that's accessing all the great things that are available to me or available to you or available to any team member. And it was interesting listening to that. And so when you think of this team of individuals, what do you think about people and authenticity and being their authentic self on a team? Is that hindering or helping?
So the Diary of a CEO podcast, thanks for pointing me to that episode. I listened to it in its entirety since we spoke.
It's a long one. Good for you.
Yes, I think 2 hours and 47 minutes. Yeah.
But who's counting?
I think that's what it is. It's over 2 hours and worth it. And the word authenticity, the way that she speaks about it, I think if you can be honest for our purpose and for our mission, where she was articulating it was, if I'm just making it about me,
yeah,
then I'm actually not making it about the team and our mission and our goal, our collective goals.
Yeah.
Because if I'm authentically selfish,
right,
I think you might be too. I think everyone on this planet probably has some form of self. They want to survive. Most people want to survive. So if that's considered selfish or self-centered, welcome to Team Humanity. We're looking to survive. And then what I took from it, and different people will take different things, is what she said, I thought very well, as you continue to listen to it, is show up in service of.
Yeah.
And I love how she articulated, don't always make it about you. Make it about what we're trying to achieve in relationship together for a mutually beneficial future.
Right. And
keep going through if you haven't finished it yet.
No, I finished the whole thing. And I thought that the way she then started to talk about it resonated with me more. And that's where I think that making sure that you align with that corporation's values is so important. And my thoughts are, if you don't align with their values, do not work for that company, because it's so integral of bringing yourself to the corporation or to whatever you're doing. Because if it's in line with your values, you are naturally going to be showing up working for the service of that purpose.
Well, as you articulated maybe initially, and I I was like you. When I first heard Don't Bring Your Authentic Self, my first response was, well, I'm not going to listen to the podcast episode because,
Well, they were trying to trigger us. They were trying to catch us with cheap clickbait.
yeah, maybe based on Stephen, I think it's Bartlett. He's not a clickbait kind of guy. So I get what you mean. And back to the core values, I would push on that a little bit and say, do you really understand the core values that the company says they have? So if one of the core values is be authentic, do you actually know what that means?
Yeah.
Are you having conversations about it? Not to understand the core value, period, how to actually bring it to life and use it as a decision-making criteria. So I see core values as ways to make decisions.
Mm.
And another term for a core value can be, what do we prioritize? So back to that podcast, I think she was saying, if you prioritize self, careful. What if you were to prioritize mutual success? And that's where I think she was leading us. So I would just challenge that. If the core values, if you truly understand and you don't align, you can't align to them. Like, let's say one of the core values was at all costs, including being unethical and cheating. And you're not an unethical, like if you see at all costs, maybe it just says, Shannon, be it at all costs. Well, we better get really clear on what that means. Yeah. And then the other thing I love about core values, and you got me triggered on that one in a good way, is we can grow into and learn and develop into living in alignment with core values. And then when we break them, which we all will, how quickly can we give each other feedback, stay in connection, get curious together, and get back in alignment with that chosen priority of behavior?
So then that begs the next question for me. Who do you see as the steward of the core values in a workplace?
How many people are in the workplace? Let's say 170. Well, let's say 170 people in the workplace. All 173. My perspective is all 173 people are stewards of the core values. So there's a definition of culture. Once again, to Mike Trotman and a fellow named Alan Luishi, happy to share their names. It's public. They introduced me to a definition of culture called acceptable behavioral norms. Another way to say it is what we accept as a team as normal. And if we don't speak up when we see something that's not in alignment with our values and what we would consider normal, not our individual ones, the team that we're on, then that becomes the new standard. So my answer would be, and I'd love your feedback on what your answer is. My current viewpoint in September of 2025 is the stewards of the core values, every single team member on the team. What do you think? Do you think the stewards are of the core values, or the steward?
I think the core values often will come from a founder, or like then will get transformed into a CEO, then will get transformed into a management team. And it's that founder's responsibility to make sure that their vision is passed on, so that has the opportunity to then create culture. I think it's fundamental and it's super important for creating a well-functioning culture. And I think not everyone does, but when they do, when they make the realization, and whether that's because they've taken over leadership of a company and they just love what the company's doing, but they didn't dig into that side of things, when it's just notes on the wall, then you can get into some real tough culture situations.
Well, what I'm hearing you say is, when a leader does not behave and prioritize in alignment with the core values, that is now the core value. So, so as much as they're on the wall and they're static, what do those companies do? So when I've worked with teams, and this is common out there, hopefully people can relate to it, is when a new person comes into the team. When a new person comes into the team and they choose to behave out of alignment with what we've identified as prioritized behavior, a core value, and the team doesn't do anything to let the person know, hey, that's out of alignment, and we start to accept that whatever that person did is okay, then the writing on the wall is changing, and that's where skepticism and finger pointing can emerge. And I would say this, core values will be, not intentionally, they will be not followed at times. So there's a list of core values that I would follow, and I break. And like rumble strips on a road, isn't it really good that those rumble strips are there to say, hey, you're behaving out of alignment. Where you're going is not going to go well. It's not going to be efficient. It's not going to help us reach our destination. We're not going to be profitable, and we're not going to have repeat customers, and we're going to have turnover in our employees and our investors will bail on us if you keep going past that rumble strip.
Right.
So consider this, if your listeners choose to. Core values are like the rumble strip. And when we're on call it the appropriate side, and we're living in alignment with the core values, it's smooth, it's efficient, we're rocking and rolling as fast as we can to the destination, our goals, our profits, our customer experience, and our purpose. When we rumble across and we make decisions out of alignment with what we said was prioritized behavior, what do we do? Do we course correct, Shannon? Or do we allow that person to go off the side of the road? Well, if we allow it, we should probably change the core values.
Or is that when teams call you and they're like, something's messed up here, what's going on?
It can be. Yeah. I mean, as you said at the top, as a mediator, I said pre-mediator, when there is turbulence and teams are now really inwardly focused, and WTF, as you mentioned on your page there, can stand for who to fault. Like, it's not me, it's you. And so it's like WTF is who to fault or what to fault. I'm going to fault the new leader. That really doesn't end well. So I'll encourage people when they say, oh, it's the new leader's fault. It's like, maybe. And where is it your fault? In other words, where have you not communicated and stood up for the core values? And if you're blaming the new leader, is one of your core values to blame? And I don't think it is. Right. So then, like, the friction that I meet, that happens is real friction. And yet teams quickly realize I'm for them. I'm for their purpose. Yeah. I'm for their metrics and their profits and their purpose. So yeah, I am asked to come in to work with teams when they're more infighting or inwardly focused.
Yeah.
And I encourage them through conversation to say, where is it them? Where can they take ownership?
Yeah.
And then what's the adjustment they can make to get back in alignment with that core value?
Well, and I think what we're talking about here, and it's what we talked about yesterday, is really perspective. And you are bringing in a giant dose of perspective when you're walking into a room, because it's so hard to often see clearly what's going on when you're in it and when you're inward focused.
Well, you're seeing really clearly your perspective, not anyone else's, yours, right? If I was to use any label, if I was to say I'm Canadian, or if I was to say I'm religious or Christian or atheist or Democrat or Republican or you name it, people will quickly, including me, lock into a perspective. Well, we're crystal clear. What we're missing is curiosity. What does, back to the podcast you reference, what does, let's just say, Christian mean to you? What does authenticity mean to you? What does bring your authentic self mean to you? So yeah, perspectives. There's a book, I was recertified last year. There's another thing I hold on my shelf by a great group in California called,
What is that thing? Is it like a half iceberg, a mountain?
I don't know what it is other than it's identifying. I should know what it is.
It is in my colors. I love those colors. I've got that all around me.
It's from the Meta Performance Institute, and there's a book they didn't write yet. They teach us as coaches looking to become meta performance coaches. It's called The 3 Laws of Performance. And maybe in the show notes, we can put the author's name there. They talk perspective, and your perspective drives your behavior. So yeah, I've written out perspectives are magic, and we're the magicians. So my perspective is my perspective. It's magic because it's actually creating my reality. And when I change my perspective, I actually change how I feel and what I see. Do you know he's passed away now, but do you know
Wayne Dyer, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
So Shannon, I'm
one of my favorites.
So Mike Trotman again, dear friend of mine and great business leader. He would go to Maui, and he was in the same hotel as where Wayne Dyer lived. And so I phoned him up one day. I said, I'm going to meet Wayne Dyer, because he turned me on to him. And he really was super impactful. His teachings and his readings and his books and podcasts really changed my life. And that phrase. So no kidding, Shannon, I'm walking in Maui, and out of the Pacific Ocean comes Wayne Dyer. So I say,
I love it.
So I say, Wayne,
as you've known him all your life.
And of course he doesn't know who I am. And he says, hi. So I was really starstruck. And I said to him, you've changed my life. You've changed my wife's life. You've influenced us so much. And I'm embarrassed at this. I said, can I take you out to dinner? Like a crazed fan, right? And he says, oh, son. He says, or, oh, darling, or whatever he would call me. Beautiful. Whatever he said was really respectful. He said, why don't you come up to my apartment? You can meet my son, and I've got a couple of things for you. So we walk into I'm shaking as I walk into his apartment, into his home in Maui.
Yeah, I don't get very starstruck, but I would get starstruck with Wayne Dyer and Jane Goodall, actually. Those two.
He hands me a book, he hands me a CD, he hands me, and he was, back to the word authentic, as genuine as they come. He was what he wrote. And to me, from my experience with him. So when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Wayne Dyer. That's another way of saying perspectives are magic, and we are the magicians. Can we shift our perspective about what we're looking at? And that requires your word, curiosity. It requires curiosity. What's another way I can look at this?
Like you have rainbows and unicorns flying around you, but to meet Wayne Dyer on the beach is one way you can look at your story. Just not finished being all excited for you. Like, I can't go on to the rest of our podcast. I want to talk about that.
Well, look at, I'm with you. It was a while ago, and I'm with you. And look at the power of connection. Your other word, right? So,
yeah.
Look, one man, and unfortunately he passed away. One man's impact. You're feeling starstruck. You never met him, I don't think.
No, but he was. Yeah, my mom had a lot of his books.
Yeah. My first experience with him was I judged him. I wrote him off. I thought he was crazy. That was my first perspective of him. Because
And my perspective was he's not crazy enough, because all his older books were all the, like, his psychology books, they were pretty tame. And when I was looking at his stuff, I wanted more.
right, and I wanted less. And this is the beauty. This is the beauty. I hope your listeners pick this up. Is I wrote him off. He's a nut. I say this is my old self. He mentioned God. And I was like, nope. And now, I went from, not that this is a religious show, I went from being atheist to being interested in faith, in part because of Wayne Dyer.
Wow. That's an interesting part of your journey.
We're incredibly
And
interested.
yeah, and just that perspective piece that it opened, you were looking at the world in this way, and then all of a sudden,
Unreal. Thanks to him and his convictions and his beliefs. And I was so close-minded. Why I can be passionate with my clients is I'm not coming at it, Shannon, as I know. Often I'm coming at it as, wow, like I've been there. I've been super close-minded. I've been egotistical. I've been insecure. I've been faithless.
Yeah.
And that got me so far. And then there was just a cap on it. And with faith, and faith includes not knowing and believing yet not necessarily knowing, and being in relationship, being in connection. I love your words. And being creative. What's another way to look at this? My life is changed and forevermore until I'm not here. I'm interested in being a student and sharing some things that people might want to consider. Not that I have the right, not that you have the right. Well, why don't we just talk about the ways we've been experiencing, the authors and the teachers and the spiritual and the political, and let's talk about it and then be open to moving along that way. Another way.
like putting all the stuff, just all those different perspectives in the mix. And if you've listened to my podcast, you know that I am a fan of the Telepathy Tapes. And what I love that she says all the time, in order to be a true skeptic, you have to be open-minded.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love that. I love people that can hold a thought that may be completely contradictory to what they've perceived as aligned for them, but they can hold it and be open to another person's perspective without having to react, judge, and just take in that information.
And another way is after we react and judge, which I did. I reacted and cut off this man named Wayne Dyer that I didn't even know. I judged him on
how I judged you with my eyeballs when you were telling me about your behavior.
Right. So how normal that would be your first reaction.
Yeah.
And we're often going to have, back to WTF, we're often going to have a WTF. And by the way, it's not even a question. It is a reaction. Yeah. It's a snap judgment without having enough. Like, we see the headline of the article. We don't read into the details of the article. A snap judgment. And yeah, just the potential that can come from after we have that snap judgment. If you think business for 1 second, I know you come 20 years really successful in the corporate space. How often we'll be in rooms and people will say, well, we can't do that. Right? When I was in the wireless industry, and I'll never forget the first time a BlackBerry. So for those of you who don't know, the BlackBerry was a cell phone that had a keyboard on it, and you would send and receive email.
Yeah, I was really good at texting on those.
The first time, I'll never forget, this fellow's name was Jeff. He came by my desk. I had a flip phone, an analog flip phone, by the way. And he said to me, check this out. It's this thing called the BlackBerry. It's made research in motion. You can get your email on it. And I kid you not, I said, who would ever want email on their phone? Nope. Now, I'm dating myself 30 years. And
And I'm right there with you.
then
Matthew,
look
don't
what
worry.
happened. So imagine, when Steve Jobs said, let's see if we cannot have a keyboard on a phone. Let's see if we can get rid of the mouse. Let's see if we can reduce things to simplicity. Like, imagine that. And, if you really look at an iPhone, for those of you who are iPhone users or not, even the Samsungs there's actually no keyboard, physical keyboard. But if we were just stuck in there's no way, like it needs to have, we wouldn't innovate, we wouldn't evolve, we wouldn't grow. And I think we're here. Perspective is, what can we learn from each other? And I'm going to be repetitive again. Can we be curious? Put our mind to what if, creativity, not right or wrong, just creativity, evolution, innovation. And then can we remain connected as we go through this, even if we're apart? Like, you and I have crossed paths really soon. There's a possibility we then don't cross paths, maybe. So we can still be connected apart. We'll just remember that, hey, we had this interaction. Or who knows what? Maybe something else happened. But yeah, I'm rambling now. I'll stop.
And well, that's great. Maybe I had some questions about you looking into teams. And it's funny because, as I was mentioning earlier, I've been out of corporate now for a year, and I've swung that pendulum of going into the creativity side really far. And just the other day, I was doing an online workshop, and so I did this Post-it note party, and I was figuring things out. Well, I really don't love to use that word, figuring things out, because I think that once you get into a certain flow of things, there's not as much that you need to figure out as you think. And things become so much more clear when you're either operating from a point of faith or intuition. And some people might call that the same thing, or an internal guidance system, or you're diving into your true self. The things that you need to figure out are less. I mean, sometimes, much to my dismay when it happens, I will have to read an instruction manual about something. But I think I digress there. But I guess I'm thinking of these teams and these teams that I've been a part of with some brilliant CEOs. What do you think the most important role of a CEO is? And can you predict whether or not that team is going to be successful based on the behavior of that CEO?
So a couple of things I would say. The first question, a CEO's role from my point of view is to be a fierce advocate of the vision of the future, picture of the future that they're going after, and they need the team to go after. So if you're going to join our team, the CEO to me is the advocate of painting a picture of the future that is beneficial to go after, not just for the company, for the customers who engage with the. So yeah, fierce advocate of picture of the future in alignment with how we're going to get there. Not necessarily the how, because the CEO, he or she, would hire a team for that.
Mm-hmm.
In alignment with a set of core values. So my perspective would be a CEO is responsible for painting a compelling picture of the future that inspires you and me to join it and give our life to it in a way, because we spend a lot of time pursuing the craft at work, and being an advocate for and hiring or firing or holding people accountable to the set of behaviors, core values to get there.
So, yeah, I think that's great. I love that, being a fierce advocate of a vision of the future. I think that's
24/7,
awesome.
24/7,
Yeah.
including 24/7. Doesn't mean they're up 24/7. I mean, that's what it takes. It's hard to build and grow a company.
Yeah.
So this might sound contradictory to what I just said around 24/7. All in includes being all out for 8 hours of sleep or whatever the requisite amount of sleep you need. For me, it's 7.5 hours. For me to be all in on the mission and vision and purpose of my clients and the KPIs, the metrics, like they need to be profitable. If our businesses are not profitable, we
There's
can't
no
invest.
business.
Yeah, we can't invest in each other.
Yeah.
And we can't live out our purpose if we're bankrupt. So for me to be all in, and all in on this podcast as an example, it requires for me 7.5 hours of sleep. It requires me to read something in the morning, and it requires me to physically take care of my physical health and my mental health. That's all in. Like that might be a definition for people listening. To be all in requires you to charge your battery spiritually, relationally, physically, mentally, nutritionally, so you can be all in for the 8, 10, 12, 16 hours that you spend on the mission and purpose of the company. So
Right.
I don't know about you, whether you're a Samsung or an iPhone user or whatever the new technology is, my phone doesn't work unless it's charged. You and I don't work unless at our fullness.
Yeah.
Without spiritual recharging, sleeping recharging, nutritional recharging, relational recharging, and all the other versions of recharging.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all into me.
Yeah, I absolutely would agree with that. And I think that it is possible to be all in that sense and to create healthier workplaces for people because you're taking care of yourself. You're making sure that brain, like in that last podcast, has got the space. It's not overflowing with all the stuff you don't need to worry about.
Right. And that's where back to healthy workplace,
Mhm.
back to the core values. Do the core values have some semblance of a healthy workplace?
Right.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope.
So, what are you seeing out there that gives you hope for the future, that, lights you up, that you think, because there's so much out there that can bring us down if we let it. And I'm a big proponent of looking for hope, like Jane Goodall, and try to live in a state of joy most of the time.
What you look for, you'll find.
Mm.
If you consume content, and my son showed me this actually. He showed me his version or other versions of social media feeds, and what comes up on yours will be different than comes up on mine. It's called the algorithm. And if we look for darkness, we'll find darkness. If we look for things, back to the Wayne Dyer expression, like when you change the way you look at things, you look at. And this isn't to say, this isn't Pollyanna. Accepting what is.
Mm-hmm.
And so to answer your question, I think what gives me hope is podcasts like this, someone like you who had, and I don't know your journey that well, had a 20-year journey in corporate, and then you're swinging the pendulum over here. Authors, businesses, CEOs, that brings me hope. There are those who are out there, some of the Patagonia CEOs, like
Yeah, right.
there's companies, not just the CEO. Let me myself. teams that choose to honor their core values, and when they break them, come back and make new decisions, that gives me hope. Seeing leaders who don't live their core values in a weird way brings me hope, because look at what leaders who make decisions that are selfish or me, or us compared to relationally, look at what's happening. That actually brings me a perverse version of hope, because it's not leading to a mutually beneficial future.
Right.
So yeah, hope to me, without sounding, if I sound Pollyanna, it's misguided. I see hope everywhere, and I see despair everywhere. What do I want to look for? And then no matter what, Shannon, when I see despair, okay, yes, it's there. What role can I play? Can I get in relationship with the people and the situation that is of despair? And then, so what now? So what next?
Yeah, I was going to say, so what now? And it's funny is I've got her book right here. We were talking about it yesterday, Loving What Is
Yeah.
by Byron Katie. And that's a really wonderful way to sort out what's going on in your head and to get at peace with whatever situation you're in.
Well, her first question, the work, I hope your listeners look it up, Byron Katie's work. The first question is it true? And that is a perspective.
Yes.
Right? I could say, you and I talked about the sticky notes behind you. One perspective is, oh my gosh, that's messy. Oh my gosh, that's unprofessional. WTF, how unprofessional. The question is that true? Well, my perspective might be it's unprofessional. If you asked me and told me what it was, and I'm curious with you about it, you can't shift my perspective. The new information I allow in can shift my perspective.
Right? That you allow in. Key word there.
Yeah. Not that you force into. That I allow in. Well, that requires a relationship and me to be open to your point of view. And now, is it true those are unprofessional? Not anymore, because you and I have talked about, yeah, and they're part of your creative process. So yeah, I hope your listeners take, whatever they take. My hope is we can go a little bit under the surface from just the titles and labels and our first perspective. And when someone else has a different perspective, we might want to access, and this might be a misapplication in Katie's work, but we could ask ourselves that first question: is this true?
Yeah.
And maybe
I think
do that alone, Shannon, because we might go, yeah, it's true.
Well, then you have to say the second question is, do you know with 100% certainty that it is true?
Right. And once again, if you're only doing that on your own, maybe we're back to the original podcast about authentic. Maybe you're now just making it convenient that those answers are true. But if you can do it in relationship with others and be open.
Yes. Yeah, it certainly makes it easier. It makes it easier. So on that note, I know you've actually shared some wonderful wisdom in there, but do you have any, final words of wisdom that you would like to share with our listeners?
We're all trying to figure it out. None of us have ever been here on the date of this recording. We've never been here before. You haven't. I haven't. World leaders haven't. We're on this frontier right now. And so then, so what now? So we don't know the way. We actually don't know the way because we also don't know what's coming. So can we be curious about that? And we have to move. We do have to make some steps forward. Words of wisdom, I would just ask people and let people know, hey, look, none of us have ever been here before, ever. Hopefully we've learned a lot of hasn't worked. Seems like we haven't learned that lesson yet. And then so what now, so what next in relationship as allies with curiosity. Whether those are words of wisdom or just words for people to consider. And then engaging people like you, engaging with coworkers, engaging with people with different points of view, and staying open and curious. You don't need to agree with them.
Yeah.
You also don't need to disagree. We could just have great conversations, make some adjustments, and try to create a mutually beneficial future together and or apart. It's okay. Let's be allies apart.
Yeah.
There's my wisdom. Let's be allies even if we're apart and have different points of view.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I love that. Matthew, it has been a delightful, delicious conversation. I've really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Thanks to Ruth.
Yeah, thanks to Ruth. Thank you to all who have listened to this. Please like, subscribe if you haven't done so already. And I look forward to seeing you next week.
Shannon.